Hey guys, tonight we sit beneath an old tree whose branches stretch far beyond the reach of time itself. The ground is soft here, like it remembers every footstep that ever wandered too far and every dream that fell asleep under its shade. A quiet breeze hums low through the field, carrying the scent of earth and a hint of something sweeter, like stories waiting patiently to be heard. You probably wouldn't make it here if you were looking for it. That's the thing about places like this, they're found only when you're not searching. Maybe you took a wrong turn, or maybe you needed to get lost in order to be found by something older and wiser than yourself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, share your location and what time it is where you are. I love knowing who's joining us across the world tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step through tall, whispering grass, each blade bending gently to your passing, as though welcoming you back to a place you never knew you missed. The air carries that scent you only find in wide open spaces, sun-warmed soil, sweet roots, and something more subtle, memory, perhaps. And then, there it is, an old tree. You wouldn't call it beautiful in the usual sense. Its bark is worn and furrowed, its branches knotted like someone's tired hands, but there's something undeniably magnetic about it. It stands not tall, but still in a way that makes everything else feel like noise. You draw closer, maybe without realizing why. The trunk is thick enough to carry centuries, and the roots twist across the ground like veins carrying stories back to the heart of it. You pause just short of touching it, not out of fear, but reverence. It feels alive, not breathing, but deeply present. You sit, the grass gives way gently beneath you, and the earth holds your weight like an old friend. For a long moment, nothing happens, and then, very slowly, something does. It's not a sound, not exactly, it's more like a feeling. The kind that hums just below language. A subtle warmth rises from the base of the tree, not heat, but knowing, as if the tree has acknowledged you, as if it's been waiting for someone to simply sit. You lean back, close your eyes for a moment, and the world narrows to the quiet rustle of leaves, the occasional sigh of wind, and your own breath slowing to meet the rhythm of the place. And here's the quiet life lesson it offers without ever saying a word. Sometimes, presence is the most generous thing you can give to yourself or to the world. It's easy to forget how much can shift just by pausing. Some say we must always be doing to feel useful. But maybe, just maybe, usefulness isn't always the point. Maybe the tree isn't here to grow taller or sprout more leaves. Maybe it's here simply to witness, to listen. You glance up and notice how the branches arch above you, not reaching for anything, but simply resting in their own shape, like an old friend who no longer needs to prove they belong. And then, that thought drifts in. What if we're all trees? In a way, rooted to moments, weathered by time, learning, slowly, how to stay standing through every season. You smile, not because it's a brilliant idea, but because it feels like something you already knew, something you forgot. And this tree, this quiet sentinel of time and patience, has simply reminded you. You lay a hand gently on one of the roots nearby. It's firm, textured with age, and cool to the touch. But under that coolness, there's something steady, a quiet pulse, not literal, not a heartbeat, but a sense of connection. Like this living thing is inviting you to remember how much is shared between all things that grow. And just when you think the moment has reached its still point, a leaf detaches and drifts downward in front of you. Not in a rush, not forced by wind, just letting go. Its descent is peaceful, like a sigh. You watch it land beside you. Funny, isn't it, that we often think falling is something to fear. But this leaf, it falls with grace. And there's the metaphor. Not everything that falls is failing. Some things are simply ready to rest. You take a deep breath, and the air fills your chest like warm tea on a cold night. You let it go slowly, and the tree does nothing, and in doing nothing, teaches you everything. You wonder, for just a moment, how long this tree has stood here. Who else has sat beside it? What stories has it listened to that never made it into words? Maybe this tree has held grief, laughter, silence. Maybe that's why it feels so steady, because it has carried the weight of what others couldn't. And now, it carries you. The thought flickers. If the world stopped expecting us to bloom all the time, would we learn to love our winters too? The sky above deepens into that soft twilight blue, and you realize time has passed. The tree doesn't mark it in minutes or hours, only in shadows that grow longer and the light that leans more golden. You're not in a rush. Nothing here is, and maybe, just for tonight, that's enough. A bird calls distantly, just once, and the breeze moves again, lifting the fallen leaf beside you and spinning it a few inches closer to the tree. You smile, even after letting go. It returns. And so do you. Not to anything in particular. Not to a task or a title or worry. You simply return to stillness. To the awareness that you are here. You are breathing. You are part of something that doesn't need fixing. The tree offers no words. But you understand. Anyway, you don't move for a while. There's a soft comfort in being still. In letting the tree's quietness drape over you like a well-worn blanket. It's not silence. Not exactly. It's the kind of hush that holds things. Secrets, maybe, or memories, or just the gentle noise of being alive without rushing to be more. Your fingers trace a groove in the bark near your side, and you feel how deep the lines run. Like wrinkles in time. You wonder, if this tree could speak, what would its voice sound like? Maybe like wind through a hollow log. Or maybe not a voice at all, but a feeling, deep and low and full of patience. The root beneath your palm hums again. Just faintly. You close your eyes. And then, something strange begins to happen. It's not magic. Not the kind you see in movies. At least, it's more subtle than that. The kind of magic that doesn't need a soundtrack. You feel drawn inward, like a thought curling in on itself. Or maybe you're listening more deeply than usual. Either way, something shifts. Images form behind your eyelids, not visions, but impressions. A boy, small, maybe 6, sitting right where you are, barefoot and grinning at a butterfly on his toe. Then it's a woman, older, silent, her back leaning against the tree like she's asking it to hold the things she can't anymore. Then a pair of lovers. Then someone alone, crying so quietly even the birds didn't notice. You don't see them, not exactly. You sense them, the way a room remembers a song even after the record has stopped. And somehow, you know this. The tree hasn't just been a witness to time, it has felt it. The joys, the aches, the things people never said aloud but brought here in the weight of their presence. You breathe in deeply. The air is cooler now, touched by the evening's arrival. The sky overhead is beginning to wear a bit of stars. There's a gentle ache in your chest, not sadness, but recognition. That tender ache you get when you realize you're not the only one who's ever needed to fall apart in silence. And then comes the soft life lesson of this moment. There's power in presence, but even more in the quiet empathy of shared space. You don't need to fix anyone. You don't even need to understand. Sometimes, just sitting with what is, without judgment, without rush, is enough. The metaphor appears as the wind picks up and tugs a loose strand of your hair, curling it like a tiny vine around your ear. You think of how vines climb, not by force, but by sensing, reaching, trusting the surfaces they cling to. Maybe people are like that too, growing not in straight lines, but in spirals, finding our way by feel. The tree creaks faintly as the wind brushes its branches. It doesn't resist, it doesn't brace, it moves, just slightly, with a grace that speaks of decades of learning how not to fight what's passing through. You imagine, for a heartbeat, what it might be like to live like that. To be so rooted in who you are that nothing sways you for long. To bend without breaking. To reach without grasping. And then the what if nudges in. Soft as ever. What if the stories we carry aren't ours alone? What if the tree remembers them for us? So we don't have to bear them alone anymore? You open your eyes and the tree is still there. As solid and quiet as before. But now it feels warmer. As though the ground beneath you knows your name. Not the one people call you. The other one. The one that only moments like this can whisper back to you. There's a hush that follows. And in it, you sense a story waiting. Not yours. Not entirely. A figure appears on the edge of the clearing, distant at first. Just a silhouette against the last pale light. You don't panic. This place doesn't allow for panic. The figure walks slowly, deliberately, the way someone does when they aren't sure if they're welcome, but hope they are anyway. They approach the tree, not you. Just the tree, and pause. Like someone knocking on a door without their hand. You notice their shoulders, not slumped, not quite, but holding something invisible. Something heavy. They place a hand gently on the bark, close their eyes, and lean their forehead against it. They don't speak, they don't cry, but you feel something lift, like a thread being untangled beneath the surface. And in that quiet exchange, you realize, this tree doesn't belong to anyone, but it welcomes everyone. No questions, no judgments, just a place to rest what you're not ready to carry anymore. The figure stays only a moment longer, then turns and walks away, back into the tall grass and the softening night. You don't follow. You don't need to. The tree is still humming faintly through its roots. And somehow, you know that whoever they were, they left lighter. Maybe that's what this place is for. You shift slightly, brushing a small pebble from under your leg. It tumbles a bit and lands against a tiny clump of moss. And there, another metaphor. Even rocks need something soft to land on. You smile again, a small, quiet one, the kind that isn't for anyone else. Above you, a few stars blink through the sky. Shy and patient, the tree stands firm, not needing to reach for them, just content to watch. And you're still here, listening, breathing, being. The tree remains unmoved, and yet you feel it shift inside you. There's something profound in the way it accepts everything without resistance. Rain, sun, strangers, silence, it embraces it all. No questions asked. Maybe that's why the memory of the figure who came and left so quietly lingers. Their presence didn't disturb anything, it was simply folded into the tree's rhythm. Like another note in an old, unfinished lullaby. As you sit there, letting the hush deepen, something new stirs. Footsteps. Not close, not urgent, just the soft tread of someone approaching. Carried on the hush of twilight. The air responds first. A slight tension. The way the world changes when someone grieving enters a room. Even if they say nothing. You don't turn immediately. There's no fear in this place. Only a curious kind of calm. So you listen. The footsteps stop at the far side of the tree. A slow exhale. Then the scrape of someone lowering themselves to the ground, not collapsing. Not resting, but something in between. The sound of limbs folding with weariness that runs deeper than the body. A voice, low and raspy, finally breaks the quiet, not speaking to you, not even really to the tree. More like a voice that's been waiting for silence just long enough to finally be heard by itself. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. It's not meant for you. And you don't respond. Instead, you let the tree hold the space. That seems to be what it does best. The voice continues, a little shakier now. Everything feels hollow, like I'm walking through my own life but can't touch any of it. The way they say it, there's no drama in it, no performance, just the simple ache of being lost. And here comes the soft life lesson. Some burdens don't need solutions, They just need air and quiet company. The tree seems to understand. Its roots don't pull back. Its branches don't lean away. It simply allows the pain to exist without needing to fix it. You think about how rare that is. How often people rush to fill silences that were never asking to be filled. How often discomfort is met with distraction instead of presence. You glance around the trunk. Slowly, respectfully, the stranger's face is partially hidden. Angled downward, elbows on knees, fingers laced tight like someone holding their own ribs together from the outside. They look like someone who's used up all their brave faces and came here to fall apart without an audience. And somehow, the tree makes that possible. You wonder what brought them here. A loss? A failure? The slow erosion of a life they once believed in? Maybe all of it, maybe none. The specifics feel less important than the way they sit, wordless now, letting the night hold them the way the roots cradle the earth. A breeze stirs again, passing between you both like a shared breath, and with it, another what if floats in gently. What if healing doesn't always look like getting better? What if sometimes, it just looks like being allowed to not be okay, for as long as you need? The thought settles like dew. The tree creaks faintly, and a few loose leaves flutter down in quiet agreement. One of them drifts sideways and lands near the stranger's shoe. They don't notice, or maybe they do, and they're just not ready to look up. You let your eyes wander to the roots again. Some are thick and obvious, bulging through the soil like knotted ropes. Others are smaller, delicate as veins, disappearing beneath the grass. You think about how far they must reach, how many places this one tree connects to without ever leaving its spot. A metaphor arrives, soft as moss. You don't always have to move to grow. Sometimes the deepest change happens in stillness, in sinking further into where you already are. The stranger shifts. Their voice returns, but now it's a whisper, spoken more to the bark beneath their hand than anything else. I thought gratitude was supposed to make this easier. They murmur, but I can't feel it. Not right now. You understand. Of course you do. Gratitude, when forced, becomes another mask to wear. Another should. And the tree offers no judgment. Just a space where even ungrateful hearts are allowed to sit and breathe and be seen. After a long pause, the stranger sighs. But I'm tired of holding all this alone. The sentence hovers in the air. Not a question, not a plea, just a truth that needed saying. And slowly, they lean back against the tree. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Enough to share some weight. Enough to begin the long, gentle process of unraveling the silence around their ache. You look away, not because it's awkward, but because it feels sacred. Like the tree is tending to them now. And you're just part of the circle that makes that possible. The stars are brighter now. No moon yet, just silver freckles pricking the sky above. You wonder what the tree thinks of stars. If it sees them as distant cousins. If it envies their glow or simply watches. Content to root instead of rise. Another quiet smile touches your lips. These thoughts, you wouldn't have had them anywhere else. This place makes space for gentle nonsense and soft wonder. And in that space, things bloom. Like understanding. Like grace. Like the subtle knowledge that not everything needs an answer to be meaningful. The stranger doesn't speak again. But something has shifted. Their posture isn't so tight. Their breath is slower. The hollow in their voice has filled in a little, not with joy. Not yet, but with the beginning of presence. Of being with instead of against. You think about leaving, but only for a second. This night is long, and the tree isn't done with you yet. So you stay, and the wind passes through once more, rustling the branches like a lullaby you almost remember. The stars keep watching, quiet and undemanding. You lean back a little farther against the tree, your spine meeting bark, and for a moment, you feel yourself exhale more deeply than you realized you could. It's as if your bones have loosened under the weightlessness of the night. There is no urgency here. No expectation. Just time folding softly around you like a favorite blanket. The stranger hasn't moved, but you sense something has settled inside them too. Not resolved, not healed, but steadied, like a boat that's stopped fighting the current and is simply drifting for a while. And then, almost out of nowhere, a giggle, high-pitched, uncontrolled, giddy in the way only a child's laughter can be. You both turn, gently, instinctively, and there, just beyond the ring of roots, a small figure darts through the tall grass. Barefoot, hair wild, a little dandelion crown slipping sideways on their head like it got tired of being perfect. They're chasing something invisible, or maybe not. Maybe it's real to them. This tiny joy that flickers like fireflies behind their eyes. The child doesn't see you or the stranger, or the tree, even, but somehow, they run straight toward it, straight into it, as though drawn by something their mind hasn't named but their heart already knows. You and the stranger exchange a glance, wordless but warm. There's a kind of wonder in the way the child throws themselves onto the ground, arms stretched wide like they're hugging the very soil. And the tree, of course, says nothing, offers nothing, and yet gives everything. The child rolls over and stares up through the branches. Their breath slows. Their arms drop to their sides. They're quiet now, as if the sky has pressed a hush into their thoughts. You smile. So does the stranger. And here comes tonight's quiet life lesson, tucked into the folds of that small moment. Joy, when it arrives uninvited, often heals more than intention ever could. The metaphor forms as the child gently blows a dandelion seed into the wind. The seeds scatter like tiny parachutes, drifting wherever they please, weightless and wild and absolutely unconcerned with where they land. Maybe gratitude is like that, too, not a goal to be chased, but something that arrives on its own terms. Not because we earned it, but because we finally stopped clenching our fists long enough to receive it. The child suddenly sits upright, brushing grass from their shirt. They stare at the tree for a long time, eyes wide, not with fear, but with the kind of recognition that children seem born with and adults spend a lifetime trying to remember. Then, softly, they place their small hand on one of the exposed roots. No words, just a moment, and somehow, it's enough. You wonder where they came from, who they belong to, but nothing about this place feels concerned with questions like that. The tree doesn't ask for names. It doesn't need to know how long you've wandered or how heavy your story has grown. It just listens, and, in doing so, it lets things soften. The child stands, looks around, sees you. Their face lights up with the kind of smile that isn't learned, it's instinct. A natural offering. They wave, as if you're someone they've met in a dream before, and then turn and disappear into the grass again, following a sound or shadow or song that only they can hear. The stranger beside you lets out a breath that almost sounds like a laugh. It's small, but it's real, and it means something. Kids, they murmur, voice lighter. They remind you of something. Don't they? You nod. Even if you don't say it, you feel it. They remind you of the version of yourself that still believes in soft landings, in magic, in unannounced wonder. And then the what if drifts in, slow and glistening like dew. What if wonder isn't something we outgrow, but something we forget to water? You rest your hand on the root again. It's warm now, or maybe you are. There's a soft hum under your skin that wasn't there earlier. A sense of being rooted, not stuck, just still, in a way that feels intentional. The stars blink brighter. The breeze changes direction. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls out once and then quiets. The child is gone, but their energy lingers, like sunlight held in a stone long after the day is done. The stranger stands, stretches. They seem lighter. Their eyes meet yours, and there's something shared in that glance. Something unspoken. Thanks, they say. It's not for you. Not entirely. Maybe for the tree. Maybe for the space between all three of you. They walk away without hurry. No dramatic farewell, just a gentle step back into the world. The way you leave a sacred place, quieter than when you came. And now you're alone again. But not lonely. You close your eyes and feel the shape of the evening. The edges of it softened now by laughter, stillness, and silent company. This tree, this keeper of unnoticed moments, has given you something. Not in words, not in instructions, but in presence. And as you sit there, listening to the hush settle like dust, another smile visits. You let it stay. There's nothing to fix here. Nothing to chase. Just breath, and bark, and stars. You're still tracing the gentle hush left behind by that child when something unexpected stirs, not outside you, but within. A quiet pull, like being tapped lightly on the shoulder by your own heart. You press your palm flat against the root nearest your side, and that familiar hum greets you again, not like a heartbeat, but more like a distant echo of something just beginning to wake. A warmth that has no source except awareness. And as you close your eyes, you don't fall asleep, you fall into something. You're still here, still sitting, but suddenly, you feel a story begin, not told in words, but passed through feeling, a slow unfolding, like a scroll written in sensation. The story is not yours, and yet, it is. It's the story of roots. Not just this tree's, but roots that run deeper than any one being. Roots that pass beneath towns and fields and rivers. Roots that brush against each other gently underground, reaching, greeting, feeding, feeling. You feel how this tree once began. A seed no bigger than a freckle, tucked into the quiet of soil. You feel the trembling when rain first soaked the earth, and something inside it dared to push out a single green thought. You feel how long it took before that tiny shoot broke the surface. How the sun found it, how wind tested it, how it learned to grow not by racing upward, but by sinking downward first. That's the metaphor right there, isn't it? True growth doesn't start by reaching. It begins by rooting, by grounding into what holds you, even when no one else can see. And you see it clearly now, how the roots didn't just grow for food or water. They grew to find others, to connect. Some say trees talk through their roots, through mycorrhizal webs of shared nutrient and knowledge. But maybe, just maybe, they also listen through them. Maybe when one root touches another, it sends more than signals, it sends memory, gratitude, presence. You feel it now, not just the idea of gratitude, but the shape of it, the slow, firm kind that doesn't arrive in moments of joy, but settles after grief. Not the bright spark of thankfulness, but the steady coal of I survived, and I see beauty again. And that's what this tree has been offering, not just to you, but to everyone who's come before. Strangers with heavy hearts, children with wild laughter, wanderers with hollow voices. The roots have touched them all. The life lesson here is delicate and deep. Gratitude isn't a reaction, it's a rhythm, a rooting. A quiet agreement to keep growing, even when no one claps. You open your eyes and the tree is still, unchanged. But now, every knot in the bark feels like a page in a book you're just beginning to read. You imagine someone long ago, maybe centuries back, resting their palm where yours now lies. Maybe they were tired, maybe they had just lost someone, maybe they simply didn't know where else to go. And maybe the tree didn't answer their questions. Maybe it just listened, and shared something through its roots that helped them keep walking. That thought settles in your chest like a small warm stone. Something to hold, something to return to. A breeze picks up again, brushing your face with cool fingers. It carries the scent of moss. Damp and ancient, you inhale deeply. The earth is speaking in that way it always has. Even if we've forgotten how to hear. You look down, and you notice, between the roots, tucked like a forgotten note, a small token. It's just a stone, smooth, flat, but etched faintly with something, a mark, a symbol, or maybe just a pattern left by rain. It doesn't matter. What matters is that someone left it. A trace of presence. You don't take it. Instead, you place your hand beside it. Not to claim, but to honor. To join the quiet chain of those who have come, and listened, and left something behind without needing anything returned. And then the what if tiptoes in. Uninvited and welcome. What if we are not meant to hold everything ourselves? What if we are made to root into each other gently, share the weight, and give thanks not in grand gestures, but in quiet being? The tree sways again. A leaf detaches, not the first, not the last, and drifts down in front of you. It lands softly, folding itself in two like it's resting. You pick it up, not out of habit, but reverence, and as you hold it, you think of how leaves give and give until they've given all, and even then, their falling feeds the ground. There's gratitude in that, the kind that doesn't require recognition. You lay the leaf down beside the stone, where roots curl like sleeping fingers. You don't say anything, you just let the moment speak for itself. Above you, the stars bloom brighter. The branches stretch toward them, not in hunger, but companionship, like two elders sharing silence on a porch, saying nothing and everything all at once. And you feel something settle inside you, like a question that no longer needs an answer. You're not waiting for anything. You're just here, present, rooted, grateful. You were resting beneath the tree when a gentle stir in the branches caught your eye. One leaf, golden and brittle at the edges, had loosened from its place and begun to twirl downward. It didn't rush. It didn't fight the fall. Instead, it danced, drifting slowly in wide circles, kissed by sunlight and carried softly on the breath of the afternoon wind. You followed its descent, your gaze tracing its gentle spiral until it touched the ground beside you with the silence of a whisper. There was something tender in that motion, something far deeper than just the turning of a season. You leaned in, drawn not by curiosity, but by an unspoken reverence. This leaf had spent months drinking sunlight, whispering in the wind, offering shade to those below, clinging quietly through storms and stillness alike. And now, it had let go, not with sorrow, but with a grace that felt like gratitude. You picked it up carefully, holding it in your palm. Its veins were faint, like memories etched in time. You imagined all it had seen, the laughter of children running beneath the branches, the weary feet of wanderers resting in the shade, the quiet prayers of those seeking peace. The leaf had witnessed all of it, and perhaps now, its fall wasn't an ending, but a soft thank you, a gesture of release, a way of saying, "I've done what I came here to do." You glanced up at the tree. Its branches were still full, still reaching skyward, and yet, in the space where that single leaf had been, there was now a little more room for the light to shine through. Sometimes, you thought, letting go isn't a sign of weakness, it's the most loving gift of all. The tree had given the leaf life, and the leaf, in turn, had given everything it could. And when its time came, it didn't cling, it simply bowed to the breeze and allowed itself to fall with beauty and grace. You placed the leaf gently beside the roots and whispered a quiet thank you of your own. Because in that one small moment, you had seen something many never notice, that even in falling, even in surrender, there is honor, there is peace, there is love. The wind has shifted ever so slightly now, brushing cooler and slower across your skin as you follow the old tree's voice into another part of its story. The trail beneath your feet softens, moss gives way to fine sand, and the forest hum begins to mellow. It feels like you've wandered into a memory rather than a place. Time drips slowly here, as if pausing to listen too. The tree speaks of a traveler, a woman with ink-stained fingers and a heart full of half-finished letters. She had once set off to write a novel about joy, yet somehow ended up chronicling sorrow. Life, she found, had a strange way of rewriting the chapters she thought she had authored herself. She came to sit beneath the tree during a summer that never fully arrived. The rain kept falling, gentle and gray, blurring the lines between days. And each day, she would read one of her unsent letters aloud, whispers of regret, fragments of gratitude, and the names of people who had shaped her in ways both tender and sharp. You imagine her voice, slightly shaky at first, growing steadier with each syllable, like someone sweeping dust off old furniture, revealing the beauty underneath. Some days she laughed mid-sentence. Other days tears blurred the ink. The tree listened without interruption, offering the only kind of comfort that didn't need fixing or reply. And slowly, she began to remember moments she hadn't written about, the way her father would whistle when slicing apples, how her best friend once sang out of tune just to make her smile, how a stranger once returned her lost sketchbook with a daisy tucked inside. These were roots, the tree reminded her, not the flashy petals of success, but the deep, unseen parts that held life together. The letters changed after that. They became shorter, more spacious. She began writing to the wind, the stars, the child she used to be. And one morning, without fanfare or farewell, she left a final letter tucked into the tree's bark and walked away barefoot. You glance at the trunk now, and somehow you know, the letter is still there. Paper thinned with age but words intact. Maybe it was never meant to be read, only held, like some truths that live best in silence. There's a pause in the story as if even the tree is exhaling. And you take that moment too, to reflect. Maybe your own letters, written or not, are still speaking softly somewhere. Not every word needs a reply. Some things, like certain kinds of healing, are shaped in the simple act of being expressed. You wonder, quietly, what would you write if no one ever read it? And perhaps more importantly, what would you still choose to say? The sand beneath you holds a warmth now, like pages drying in sunlight. You dig your toes in slightly, grounding yourself in that thought. Gratitude, the tree muses, isn't always a loud thank you. Sometimes it's the space you give yourself to sit beside your own story and nod gently at how far you've come. Some say words have power only when shared, but maybe, just maybe, the ones you whisper to yourself are the most sacred of all. As the old tree continued its story, your steps found a rhythm, slow, thoughtful, steady. You passed through a grove where the light turned amber, as though the sun itself had dipped into a bowl of honey. The air was still, but not silent. It carried the gentle hum of life in reflection. The tree began to speak of a boy who once visited its roots, not with sorrow or searching, but with wide eyes and a boundless sense of wonder. He was no more than 10, barefoot and curious, his hands always full of things he didn't yet have words for, a feather shaped like a question mark, a stone warm from sunlight, a broken watch he was determined to fix. He came not to heal, but to share. Each day after school, he'd arrive with a new story, as if the world poured itself into his small frame just so he could spill it out beneath the tree. One afternoon, he brought a grasshopper with a crooked leg. Another day, he presented a jar of fireflies and whispered, "These are pieces of stars that haven't decided what to become yet." And the tree, in its great and quiet wisdom, received it all like precious cargo. Then one evening, he came carrying nothing at all. His voice was different, slower, like it had to wade through something thick and invisible. "My sister went away," he said simply. "Mom says she's in the sky, but I saw her shoes still at the door." You feel the ache in those words, so small and soft, and yet impossibly large. That day, the boy didn't talk much. He just lay on the roots, staring up through the branches, trying to find a gap in the leaves big enough to fit his grief through. He came back the next day, and the day after. Sometimes he cried, sometimes he didn't, but he always sat in the same spot, as if the earth could remember him even when the world seemed to forget. And then, after many sunsets, he brought something new, a piece of paper with a drawing, his sister, riding a comet made of crayons. waving at a planet that looked suspiciously like home. He pinned it to the tree bark with a twig and said, "I think she's okay now. And I think I will be, too." Years later, others would come and find that drawing still there, faded but not forgotten. A quiet offering, a reminder that even in loss, there can be color. Even in endings, there are echoes. The tree paused again, as if letting you absorb the gentleness of it all. And you begin to understand. Gratitude isn't only something we give in retrospect, tied up neatly with resolution. Sometimes it's what we plant in the very middle of confusion. Sometimes it's a whispered thank you, not for what is easy, but for what teaches us to feel deeply. You notice now how your own hands have been lightly brushing against the bark as you walk, as if reaching for grounding, or permission to remember. Maybe you were once like that boy, trying to explain a loss too big for language. Maybe you still are. But the tree doesn't ask for perfect articulation. It only listens. It holds the things people leave behind, drawings, letters, laughter, and grief, and lets time make meaning of them all. And as you walk further, your heart lightens, because you realize there are stories in you still waiting to be told. Not because you must, but because they deserve the gentle weight of being witnessed. And maybe, just maybe, gratitude is the name of the space where those stories can unfold. The path curves now, gently sloping upward. The forest begins to thin, and a soft breeze stirs the tips of the grasses lining your way. You can feel the story lifting with you, unfolding not only from the tree's voice but from within yourself, like remembering something you never realized you'd forgotten. The tree's voice continues, rich and full of patient memory. "There once came a man," it says, "whose life had worn thin from years of running. Not in the way feet run, but the kind of running that happens deep in the mind, away from guilt, from regret, from the echoes of decisions not easily undone." You pause, feeling the weight of those words settle around you. This man was in his 50s, with shoulders that carried too many invisible loads. He didn't kneel to rest by the roots like the others. He stood stiffly at a distance, as if afraid the stillness might accuse him of something. He stayed for hours on that first day, saying nothing. The second day, he brought a bottle, not of water. He drank it slowly, not out of pleasure, but penance. By the third day, he didn't bring it anymore. Only silence, and slowly, over weeks, that silence became something else. It became listening. He started to notice the sounds of the birds, the way the wind moved through the canopy like a tide, and how the bark of the tree held warmth long after the sunset. And then, one morning, without prompting, he spoke. "I wasn't a good father," he said. His voice didn't shake. It cracked open. "She needed me to be softer. I thought strength meant silence. Now she won't return my calls. She sends photos of her kids, and I don't even know their names." The words were brittle, but they didn't break him. Instead, they began to root. Every day after, he'd speak a little more, not in dramatic bursts, but in slow truths. He confessed more to the wind than to anyone else. Missed birthdays, withheld apologies, love hidden behind pride. And the tree listened, as it always had, until one spring afternoon, the man placed a folded letter in a notch in the trunk and said, "This is for her. I don't know if she'll ever read it, but I needed someone to hold it." He never took the letter back. He simply came less and less, until one day he didn't return. But a year later, a young woman stood beneath those same branches with two small boys chasing beetles around her feet. She didn't say much, just looked up at the sky through the leaves and said softly, "He tried. I think I see that now." And just like that, something unspoken was mended. You feel your chest swell, not with sorrow, but with a deep, fragile tenderness, the kind that doesn't need to fix the past, only to understand it. Because sometimes gratitude isn't loud. Sometimes it's the act of allowing healing to happen, even if you're not there to see it through. Sometimes it's trusting that what you give, truth, apology, love, can live on. Even after your footsteps fade, you stop to breathe. The air tastes different now, cleaner, fuller, like forgiveness. And for a moment, you feel your own regrets loosen slightly. Not disappear, but soften around the edges. Because there's room in you now. Not just for memory, but for mercy. The old tree speaks no more for now. It waits, content in the knowing that the story has passed to you. And the path ahead shimmers faintly, golden and quiet, ready to receive whatever you choose to offer next. The path winds once more, but this time the direction feels deliberate, not just forward, but inward. The soft hush of the forest now echoes inside you. Each step feels like brushing away layers of dust from a long-forgotten memory. Or maybe a part of yourself that's been waiting patiently to be noticed. The old tree, ever gentle, resumes its story. There was a girl, it says, young in years but ancient in the way she listened. She had no parents, not in the way the world defines them. She came from a home stitched together by silence and survival. You close your eyes and let the image form. A small girl with wide, watchful eyes. The kind of eyes that had seen too much too soon. Her clothes were always slightly too big. Her shoes worn thin. But she walked with the quiet dignity of someone who had learned to carry herself when no one else would. She came often. The tree continues. But she never sat. Always standing. Always with her hands behind her back. As though she were in the presence of something sacred but didn't know how to receive it. The girl didn't speak for the longest time. But she would bring things, small offerings. A white feather, a smooth stone, a ribbon she had once tied in her hair. She would place them gently at the base of the roots. Then leave. And the tree, in its patient way, accepted them all. One afternoon, as sunlight poured like gold through the leaves, the girl stood longer than usual. Her fingers trembled slightly. And then, her voice, barely above the rustle of the wind, whispered, "Do you think someone like me can grow up kind?" The tree, of course, didn't answer in words, but the breeze lifted her hair like a gentle hand. The birds quieted, the branches bowed ever so slightly, and the earth beneath her feet seemed to hum a soft, reassuring yes. From that day on, she returned not with tokens, but with stories. Stories of schoolyard cruelties, of teachers who smiled too briefly, of days when she wanted to scream but instead wrote poems in the dirt with a stick, of moments when someone offered her kindness and how it shook her to the core, because she didn't know what to do with it. And one day, years later, she came back in a neat coat, her eyes still wide, but steadier now. She placed a book at the tree's roots, a children's book. The cover showed a small tree and a girl standing beneath it. She said, "I wrote it, for the ones like me." And then she smiled, not the shy smile of someone seeking approval, but the soft, proud smile of someone who had made peace with where she came from and was learning to love who she was becoming. You feel tears prick your eyes, not out of sadness, but out of that quiet recognition of beauty born from hardship. The tree's voice lowers, like a lullaby now. She didn't need to become loud to be heard. She didn't need to be perfect to be worthy. She simply needed to believe that kindness was not something others gave her, but something she could become. And you, listening now, feel that truth stir within you. All this time, you've walked this forest seeking meaning, seeking something more. And here it is, not in grand revelations, but in the quiet echoes of others who dared to believe they could be more than their pain. The wind rustles gently again. You pause and touch the nearest branch. It's rough, textured, alive, just like you. Maybe, like the girl, you're learning that gratitude is not just about what was given, but what you've chosen to grow from it. And now the path opens before you, wide, soft with moss, radiant in the afternoon light. You realize you are no longer just listening to stories. You are becoming one.